Hello, Titanic book lovers from the UK. It's Anthony Cunningham here, author of Titanic Children. Now, I don't read a lot of fiction anymore. I struggle to read fiction nowadays, but I've always wanted to have a go at this book here. The Memory of Eva Ryker by Donald Stanwood. Now, this novel is about 40 years old, actually. I think it was published in 1978, yes, and then was made into, I think, a TV movie by the legendary Owen Allen, he of the Poseidon Adventure. But I'd heard sort of good things about The Memory of Eva Ryker, so I got this vintage copy. That's a great early cover there. I love that cover. And I ploughed in. So I thought I'd give you a very informal review, having finished it yesterday. So it's kind of in the style, in terms of how it reads. I had no expectations at all about what it was going to be like. But I soon realised it was kind of in the style of the old Sidney Sheldon novels. Or even Dan Brown. It's quite pacey. It draws you in, and there's lots of cliffhangers. The chapters are reasonably short, so if you're like me and you have a low attention span, this is a good book, because you can read a chapter, put it down. And in terms of the Titanic connection, it's hard to do a review of this without any spoilers. So I'm not going to give spoilers, because I think you should read it, because actually I think it's a very good novel. And this was Donald Stanwood's first novel. And I recently posted an article that I found in the Los Angeles Times. It's on this website, about Donald Stanwood, because actually he seems to have completely disappeared. He wrote another book in the 80s, which I don't know how well that did. But if you have a look at the link to that article, it's quite interesting. He had a really big success with the Memory of Eva Ryker, but then it seemed to slightly kind of sour on him a bit. And I have no idea where he is now. I believe he's still alive. But if you're watching, Donald, I enjoyed your book. Couple of things to talk about. It's quite pacey. It really draws you in. You want to know what's going to happen next. The Eva Ryker of the title is a little girl who was on the Titanic. She's fictional, obviously. She was 10 years old. So think of people a bit like, put in mind people like maybe Ruth Becker, Eva Hart, who I know she was only 7, but kind of girls like that. And she's the daughter of a millionaire, William Ryker, and she's travelling on the ship with her mother, Claire. And in the second half of the novel, we find out why Eva, now grown up, now she's in her 60s, has so many psychological problems about what happened during the period that she was on the Titanic. And the protagonist of the novel is actually a writer. And it actually starts in the 1940s. And this writer, he's trying to find out. He's been commissioned, by the millionaire, the very old now father of Eva Ryker, who's a multimillionaire, to write an article about the Titanic, a sort of investigative article, because this millionaire, Mr. Ryker, is deciding to go and find the Titanic, because he wants to salvage some quite important things out of it, for him anyway. And he does so. Now, what's so interesting about this novel is this was written, 6 or 7 years before September 85, when the real Titanic wreck was discovered. And I'm going to read you a little bit of this part of the novel where the writer chap, he goes down in a bathysphere, as they were called in the 60s and 70s. Because actually what I need to also emphasise is that the novel, although it was written in 1978, is set mostly in 1962. Okay, so the bathysphere goes down and they come across the wreck of the Titanic. It was then that... Oh, sorry, I need to put my glasses on. It was then that the misty silt below cleared and the Titanic congealed out of the haze. The ship lay on its starboard side, on an 80-degree angle. Although rusted to a brown-orange and encrusted with sea animals and ancient slime, the Titanic was still intact. No one spoke. There didn't seem to be adequate words. The bow of the ship crept past 30 feet below the port. A tangle of twisted steel from the crow's nest had smashed into the bridge, where Captain Smith had stood 50 years ago, watching the ship founder. A teacup drifted by, stirred by our passing. Our floodlights poured down onto the boat deck, revealing the lifeboat rigs. The 4 funnels had been torn away, but I saw 2 of them on the rocks, attached to their supporting cables. Lovers once walked the surface of the boat deck. Now all I saw were 2 lobster-like prawns lazily skimming about, searching for prey. Now, when it's very understated, you know, if that novel was written today, I'm sure the writer would make much, much more of that moment. But one always has to remember, I think, with the Titanic, when you're an enthusiast of the Titanic and it really interests you, it's a hard fact, but not everyone in the rest of the world is interested in the Titanic, and they just shrug their shoulders. I remember once meeting a chap in Sydney, and he was from Sweden, and I said I was interested, and they said, why? It's just this ship, it sank. Get over it, you know. But I thought I'd read that little bit because it's quite understated, isn't it? You know, interesting too, of course, that Donald Stanwood's view of the wreck. Of course, it was sinking intact, lying on its side a bit like the Andrea Doria, I suppose, almost. It really gets a pace going, and you really want to get to the end, and the end is good. It doesn't disappoint you. But one thing that I understand is that, as I say, this novel was adapted for film, and I believe Natalie Wood, she of West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, she was cast as Eva Ryker. I haven't seen it, so if I'm wrong there, I'm wrong. But I just wanted to read you the description of Eva Ryker here in the novel. Time had done a hack job on Eva Ryker. The jawline, once ruthless and crisp, must have sagged a decade ago. Curves had turned to mounds, and her long hair, wrapped up on the top of her head, was dreadful in its clairol blackness. Clairol blackness. That doesn't sound like Natalie Wood, does it? She was a very beautiful woman. I think even, you know, by the 70s or 80s when she made this movie. So that's Hollywood casting for you, isn't it? Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed The Memory of Eva Ryker. I would love it if the book club could track down Donald Stanwood here. He was quite a good-looking guy in his day. Look, I mean, that's a handsome chap. Where is he now? Where are you, Donald? Are you going to write any more about the Titanic? But anyway, I highly recommend The Memory of Eva Ryker. Give it a go, because it's one of these ones that you won't be able to put down.